Well, the Taliban stormed into Kabul on Sunday. It was not the event itself, but the rapidity of the event that shocked the global economy and the global observers. It was always expected that the Taliban would regain control, but it was expected several months down the line. Now, two things have happened since China and Pakistan have been the first two countries to recognize the new Taliban government. It changes things on two aspects for India. One, it means a leg up for two countries that have been somewhat belligerent towards India. I mean, Pakistan and China. With this alliance with Afghanistan, it becomes a terror issue, possibly, for the state of Kashmir. And the other issue is US is now seen as a withdrawing power, and China is seen as the ascendant power in this particular event in the global sweepstakes. What does that mean for India? So two questions, and joining me is someone who has observed global affairs for a very long time, Pramit Chaudhury, the senior editor of Foreign Affairs at Hindustan Times. Pramit, thank you very much indeed for joining us. My first question is with respect to the possibility of increased terrorism with the Taliban in Pakistan itself having a leg up, probably a new lease of life for ISI. Is there likelihood of greater support being given or greater recruitment of terrorists from Kashmir?
Well, I think the real issue will be the sense of accomplishment by the ISI in Pakistan. They've been, to some degree, on the back foot for the past several years, partly because of Pakistan's economic problems, our closer relationship with the United States, and events somewhat like the Pulwama bombing, which have made them a little wary of pushing the envelope regarding India. But now they have ended what they've always been scared of, a two-front war with a hostile Afghanistan and a hostile India. The Taliban is an organization which they have obviously not only was created by Pakistan, but has been obviously carefully nurtured by them. So the sense that perhaps now is an opportunity to start pushing the envelope again, especially with the situation in Kashmir and Article 370's abrogation, then this is an opportunity for them. That is, I think, the biggest concern that India will have. The global environment will be the fact that there is still, if you can see the latest UN report on terrorism, at least 1,000 al-Qaeda still in Afghanistan and working very closely with the Taliban. They meet regularly with them. The Taliban have been hostile to the Islamic State, but they've been very welcoming, as they were in the past, to al-Qaeda. So both America, the West, to a lesser extent us, al-Qaeda doesn't target India that much, will be looking at the new Taliban regime and saying, how did you learn any lessons after 9/11, or are you going to go down that same path? Okay. So you're going to get a lot more airport checks over the next 6 months anytime you fly overseas. Okay. But and the Pentagon recently gave a briefing to the Senate saying terrorist threats globally will be rising because of this. Okay.
Well, global terrorist stress has its own impact on global financial markets, but for us, it's more a border issue. I'll just come back, time permitting, to that issue. Let me come to the more pertinent economic issue. If America is seen as a withdrawing power and there is a resurgent China, which has been quick to move into, well, not quite Middle East, at least it's moved up into Afghanistan, does that make the Indian position difficult? We have seen ourselves, or we believe the US sees us as a counterweight to China. Now, do you think we are losing some advantage over here with the US seeming to withdraw from its global policeman role? Pramit, can you hear me? Have we lost the line? Okay, well, we will try and reconnect with Pramit. That could be important because Pramit, now if you can hear me, my question to you was, if US is a withdrawing power, how does that affect India? Is it a more resurgent China? How do we fare?
Well, the short term, obviously, we're already seeing China's propaganda machine coming up and saying, oh, look, this is America at its worst. Allies running away in fear from essentially a ragtag militia. The Biden administration, and I would argue China hawks in Washington, when I've talked to them, take a very different position. Their view is that America has now a major strategic challenge in the form of China, in many ways a threat far worse than the Soviet Union, or far more, should we say, able than the Soviet Union. But it was wasting its efforts by stretching itself across parts of the world, such as Central Asia, Southwest, the Middle East, where it no longer really has a strategic stake. So America needs to refocus specifically on the Indo-Pacific and Afghanistan, where America was spending $50 billion a year, tying down a fairly large amount of its military structure and operational capacity, needed to get out. And Biden is now the third US president who has said they're going to leave Afghanistan. In his view, he decided, I'm going to go cold turkey. I'm going to pull out, and I'm not going to worry about the consequences. The imagery is bad, obviously far worse than he had expected. But I think the view in the Biden administration is, if we double down now against China, for example, rearming Taiwan, or in the Quad summit that's coming up probably at the end of September, will more than compensate for the damage that we've suffered in Afghanistan. This is about a brutal geopolitical refocusing between the US and China. Afghanistan, in effect, is collateral damage.
Okay. So, all right. So the US wants to let go of its Middle East presence so as to concentrate more on the Far Eastern theater. That would be India advantage, you think, because we are being seen as a counterweight to China?
Well, for us, it's slightly mixed bag, obviously, because we are close to Afghanistan as well as close to China.
Yes.
We're unusual in being sort of, if you wish, in between those two theaters. But Afghanistan is a nation away. Pakistan is a country whose GDP is now smaller than that of Mumbai. So for us, China is obviously a much greater threat. And we are definitely clear that the Quad and getting America to invest in defending the Indo-Pacific is overwhelmingly our number one strategic priority. So if we can absorb or ensure that the Taliban do not result in a new terrorist threat against us, but it does result in America refocusing a huge amount of its resources against China, this is net a strategic benefit for India.
Okay. Do you expect then Taiwan to be the next theater? One school of thought is that with China being a resurgent power in Afghanistan and in the Middle East, it may want to stretch its resurgence in Taiwan as well. Will Taiwan become the next hot seat with China trying to push its strength and the US resisting it?
China will push for Taiwan, but I don't expect a military action, partly because it's still not strong enough. Taiwan itself is very difficult to take. Have the amphibious warfare capacity to do so. America is still militarily far more powerful than China. But the Chinese, it's very important to realize, and I was in a conversation with a member of the Biden administration's National Security Council on this, and he said the Chinese, if you look at their strategic history, the generals that they praise, that consider the greatest of their generals, are the generals who do not defeat their enemy in battle. They are the ones who defeat their enemy before the battle.
Okay.
In other words, you have to get into the enemy's mind, you have to undermine their economy, you have to divide their ranks so that when the battle happens, nothing takes place. American generals are the ones who are patterned and so on, who defeat their enemies in open battle. That's not the Chinese view, that's a sign of failure. So what they will do in Taiwan, as they are doing in Southeast Asia, which they are doing to some extent in our own neighborhood, is to undermine their enemies via almost every other means other than direct military conflict. Okay. So yes, Taiwan will be buzzed with fighter aircraft. It will be economically harmed. There will be various attempts to undermine Taiwanese internally, politically, cyber, and so on. But yes, the tensions will rise. The game really will be to ensure that these tensions between the US and China do not lead into an accidental military conflict, which of course would be of enormous global impact.
Of course. Thank you very much.
Will disappear off the market.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Pramit Chaudhury, for joining us. You've given us a lot of leads to understand how India is impacted by the developments in Afghanistan. One important impact, obviously, is this fear that there could be more terror activity since the hardliners in Pakistan now have the upper hand. This is seen as a Pakistan victory of some sorts. And with China immediately recognizing Afghanistan, the border situation becomes definitely difficult for India. That's one takeaway. But the positive, as Pramit Chaudhury says, is the US is seen as withdrawing from the Middle East because there's no point in being there. They are anyway energy surplus. The Middle East presence was for a time when US depended on Middle East oil, but now there is no point in staying on there. And therefore, it will redouble its efforts in the Far East. And therefore, India's role as a counterweight to China could actually increase. So it's not necessarily a very negative development, this withdrawal of US from Afghanistan. That's the key takeaway. Let me leave you with some of the thoughts, some of the statements made by Joe Biden yesterday when he was defending the United States move to move out of Afghanistan. Listen in.
I went to Afghanistan almost 20 years ago with clear goals. Get those who attacked us on September 11, 2001, and make sure al-Qaeda could not use Afghanistan as a base from which to attack us again. We did that. We severely degraded al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. We never gave up the hunt for Osama bin Laden, and we got him. That was a decade ago. Our mission in Afghanistan was never supposed to have been nation building. I'm deeply saddened by the facts we now face. But I do not regret my decision to end America's war fighting in Afghanistan and maintain a laser focus on our counterterrorism missions there and other parts of the world.